Hi, and welcome to another Memories Made video. I'm Designer Jen Gallacher, and today we're going to create a camping layout using some of my favorite Echo Park paper, embellishments, and papers. I'll also throw in a few other embellishments and items from different companies, but this particular camping collection called The Wildlife really inspired me. We're going to start with a Dots and Stripes paper from Echo Park. It is from their Neutrals Pack collection, and on one side it just has this great school paper grid, and this is a great neutral to start with. To the top of that, I'm going to take some of this Wildlife paper. You can see that I've used the same paper. I'm going to use the star side on one, and then I'm going to use the orange dot on another. For all of the supplies, be sure to look at the link below this video to see the affiliate links that are associated with this particular project. To the bottom of the orange paper, I'm going to add a strip of scallop paper that I've cut with some older ProvoCraft scissors that I have. But I will suggest some other types of products you can use, as these are no longer available for purchase. Below the orange paper, before I place it onto the page, I'm going to take two American Crafts DIY tags. Now there's a lot of different ones in this particular collection. You can get a pack of craft, which I have here. They also have chalkboard, as well as some white definition ones. You'll notice that one side has the reinforcer in white and one does not, so you could use either side. And the twine is also included in these tags. You can either leave the twine intact or you can simply trim it off. We're going to go ahead and place these below to bring some of that craft into the page. And you'll see I use a lot of craft on this particular page because it is reminiscent of camping. So we want to go one higher and one a little bit lower. Once I get the placement on this, and the nice thing about this grid paper is it's very easy to align different pieces of paper. We can go ahead and add this star paper. And none of this is measured. I just eyeball it, or I use the size of the scraps that I already have on hand. So don't feel like you have to perfectly measure it. I will trim my photos and other embellishments to fit the paper instead. And again, we're using the grid design to help us align all the pieces. The next step we're going to do is involving some stamping. And I'm going to use a craft sheet of cardstock, a brayer, this background stamp that has numbers in it, and a Versamark ink pad. I'll ink up the entire image with the Versamark ink pad. What this does is it brings out a slightly darker color than the craft cardstock I am using. And while some people prefer to place the stamp onto the paper, I like to place the stamp down, align the corners, and then gently press it. Now you have to be careful when doing this because if the paper slips, you're going to get a messed up, blurred design. So you want to be careful with that. And then I'm just using the brayer to press the paper into the stamp. If you don't have a brayer, I'll show you a little cheater move that I use. You can either use the stamping ink pad that you have, or you can just take anything that's hard. I've even gone so far as to use my fingers. A brayer just gives you a little bit more of a firm grip. So here's how the image looks when you've stamped it. Back to the page, I have already done this and pre-cut it. We're going to place this on the left side of the layout. To the right side of the layout, I'm going to take a sheet. This is from Cartabella paper. You can see it's from a summer collection. It's called Soak Up the Sun, and it has a texture to it, which is kind of fun. Echo Park does not, Cartabella does, so you can use whatever size you prefer. And I've pre-cut all of these elements ahead of time so that we can put the page together a little more quickly. And then when I trimmed the numbers, I trimmed it perfectly around the entire image. You'll notice that I'm going to go off the edge on this side, and I'm doing that on purpose. The photos I'm going to use for this particular page involve my daughter at a lake. And to the bottom of the photo, I'm going to take some craft journaling card. Now sometimes I'll use a darker brown stamping ink to kind of dress up the edges, but I wanted to show you that you could use your Versamark ink pad as well to give it kind of that distressed look, or if you prefer distressed ink, you just need to find one in a color that brings out that darker brown of craft cardstock. Now craft cardstock comes in a variety of different colors. Some are a little darker than others, so you just need to make sure you select the one that you like. For this particular page, I'm using a fairly dark craft color. I'm going to align the journaling up here on the bottom with this yellow pattern paper. And then I can place the photo on top. Again, I am letting it run off the edge. I like the look of layering, so I don't perfectly align everything. You'll notice that I also printed this photo at home, leaving a white border around it. If you like this look but don't print at home, take a 4x6 photo and simply mat it on white cardstock. The smaller photo, the one that is framed, I've chosen where her face is more towards the camera. And I'm using a crepe paper frame to attach the photo. Just add some glue runner to this. I'm using some American Crafts This to That dot runner adhesive. This is some of my favorite adhesive. And then we'll just center that right in the middle of the frame. A frame is a nice way to draw attention to one of the photos that best tells the story. We're going to overlap the original photo, and we're going to follow the line of that craft cardstock. Now behind the photo, we're going to do a little cluster. We're going to take a jelly bean soup card, and if you find that your adhesive is already sticking, simply trim off what you don't need. Then we're going to take a tidbit from October Afternoons. It's I believe it's called Treasure Island or something like that. I'll be sure to link you in the products below. But it's the card that says My Stories, and then we'll use a yellow tab from their library collection. So once I find an embellishment that I tend to like, I usually get a few of them. So I get tidbits a lot from October Afternoon because I like the look of these on my layout. Then I wanted to bring in some kind of a texture to the top here. So I'm going to take some Tim Holtz mini paper clips, and I'll do one so you can see the big side and one so you can see the small side. Then I want to bring in some blue. You'll notice that my daughter has blue jeans on, so that brings out the blue in this paper, but it needs a little bit of blue here at the bottom. So I've pre-cut a strip of blue. I closely matched the blue on this particular pattern paper here. And we're just going to run some adhesive right across the back of that. And I'll do that on a scratch piece of paper because my dot runner is a little bit wider than the strip and I don't want to get adhesive on my paper. You can see I've cut the strip a little bit wider than the orange dot paper. Now at the top here, I'm going to use a die cut. And this is a manual die cut from Echo Park Paper that coordinates with the Wildlife Collection. So here's how the die looks. You'll notice that it's all connected. You could snip it apart, but because none of the items are nested within one another, you can also leave it intact so you don't lose some of the small pieces. There's a large tree, a small tree, an acorn with 2 pieces to it, and then the word camp, which looks backwards, but when you cut it, cuts correctly. You'll notice that I cut a couple of trees, some from cardstock and some from pattern paper. That's a great way to dress things up, is to cut them from different types of paper. And die cuts have made a huge comeback, and you can find them in different sizes, shapes, styles, and colors. These particular ones are designed to coordinate with this particular collection, which is why I'm using them. We're going to create a little cluster here. Now I'm going to pull out some tools that I don't often use but that I have had in my stash for a long time, and that is punches. This is a very old punch. It's from Family Treasures, and it's a teeny tiny star, and then this one is from, I believe, EK Success or Fiskars, and this is a great size. This one came in 3 different sizes. So I have pre-punched out some stars from yellow cardstock, so you can kind of see the scale here. If you don't have punches anymore, look for manual die cuts, or you can use any kind of tool that you have, such as a silhouette machine or a Cricut, to cut these as well. I'm using that scratch piece of paper again to add some adhesive to the back of these pieces. But it's just fun to pull out old tools that I haven't used in a while. If you like using up things in your supply stash, make sure that you check out my product playground with big picture classes, because it involves using some of the items that you have on hand that maybe you aren't using as much. I'll be sure to link you to that class below as well. We're going to do some more stamping. This time we're going to use a definition stamp. It happens to be a thank you stamp. And we're going to use the exact same technique that we did before. We're going to use this scratch piece of paper and we'll turn it over. Again, you want to ink up the entire stamp with the Versamark ink pad. You could do a color if you wanted to. I like the subtlety of the Versamark pad best. So again, we'll line up the corners, and I'm not worrying about the adhesive or anything because I'm going to cut apart this next piece. And again, I'm using the brayer to push that image into the paper. So you can see there are parts where I smudged it a little bit. So you need to concentrate on the pieces that aren't smudged. What we're going to do is we're going to create some title strip pieces. And I'll show you one that I've already cut. You can see that it has the pattern on the front and then it's plain on the back. We're going to use that Versamark ink pad, or you could come back and use brown stamping ink. I'll show you the difference. It's almost the same as the Versamark one that we used before. And we'll just attach this behind the yellow pattern paper. We'll rip off some of the extra that we don't need. So we'll go ahead and add a few more strips. Before we add them, we'll add some of that brown stamping ink to the edges. Some of them I'm going to use that background stamp on, and some I am not. I've chosen to do it on 2 of them. And I'm going to use that same die cut that I used before, and I'm going to use the word camp this time. And I'm cheating a little bit and just tearing off the edges I don't need. You could use scissors, but you can also tear them. And then the last letter of the title will be on the stamp to the background. I like to mix it up a little bit. You could even tear the tops if you want kind of that aged look. Then I'm going to take a 1 3/8 inch circle that I have punched from yellow. You'll notice that I placed it onto the background stamp, and you can see a little bit better here the text that shows up. We're going to ink that with some brown stamping ink. And you have to experiment a little bit. I'm picky about my brown stamping ink. I happen to have one from Michael's, but I'll link you to some other options. Kind of test your colors until you get a feel for the one that you like. We're going to bring this scratch piece of paper back in and do some adhesive on the back of these letters. You'll see that I have some in coral and some in a green. I'm just using a zip glue pen for the precision that it provides me. And I'm just painting that adhesive right on the back. You could also run these through a Xyron sticker maker. Use glue dots, or whatever your favorite adhesive is. And then you'll just want to center these die pieces on the craft cardstock. The M is going to go in the center of the circle, drawing attention to just one letter so it looks a little more interesting. So there you can see how I've kind of dressed up the title a little bit. Here at the bottom, I feel like it needs a little bit more yellow, so I have some additional punch shapes. Again, we're using the 2 star shapes. You could use sequins, you could use enamel dots. All you're doing is just bringing in some more color. But you could easily use buttons and things to give the idea of stars, but it's not exactly the same thing as a punch star. Then for some more texture, I'm going to take some ribbon, and using some glue dots. First thing I'll do is put a glue dot between the two layers and then close it. And then I'll put a glue dot on the front and a glue dot on the back. We'll slip it just behind that frame. And then we'll take some of that leftover green dot pattern paper, and I'll use some scissors to trim this. And we're going to do the exact same thing, but we're going to fold it and attach it with a glue dot. One on the bottom. And if you find the glue dots are too big, just kind of mold them around the piece. And I'll use my fingers to create that fold again. And we'll stick it behind the frame and stick it down. So there you have a layout that uses some traditional manual die cuts, that brings in different colors from the wildlife collection from Echo Park Paper, and focuses on 2 camping photos. Thank you for joining me for today's Memories Made video. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of my tutorial videos.